Okay, so for this deep dive, you've brought us something really personal, actually. This piece titled, "My Name is Banned, My Tongue Silenced."
Yeah, it's by someone calling themselves a Kurdish youth. And what's striking, like you said, is how deeply personal it feels, but it's also um, heavily sourced.
Right, that's what jumped out at me, too. They're referencing Human Rights Watch, the Turkish Human Rights Association, BBC, Bianet, even parliamentary records.
Exactly. It grounds their story,
Hmm.
suggests these aren't just isolated feelings, but part of a pattern documented elsewhere.
So our aim here is really to understand the experiences and the issues this author is laying out about Kurds in Turkey based on what they've shared and sourced. It's obviously sensitive stuff.
It is, but the goal is just to explore what's presented in this account.
Okay, let's dive in. The author kicks things off with this really strong image, calling themselves the unseen child.
And talking about how their name was changed.
Yeah, and they immediately connect that, don't they, to these wider assimilation policies.
They do. Linking that very personal act to the historical denial of Kurdish identity after the Turkish Republic was formed. The whole Mountain Turks idea.
Right, like trying to erase a distinct identity.
Pretty much. Yeah. And the author argues this wasn't just talk, it led to actual policies. A key one being the suppression of the Kurdish language.
That seems central to the account, the banning of Kurdish in schools, courts, hospitals.
Yeah, and the consequences for speaking it. It's hard to really grasp the impact, not being able to use your mother tongue in everyday life in crucial places.
And the author points out this wasn't random, it came from specific laws, right?
Correct. The 1934 resettlement law, Askan Kanunu, is mentioned specifically. The author presents it as, not just about moving people, but strategically designed.
Strategic how?
To dilute Kurdish populations in their traditional areas, sort of scatter them among Turkish communities to speed up assimilation or Turkification, as the author puts it.
Wow, okay. And then things intensified later.
Especially after the 1980 coup. That era seems particularly brutal in the author's telling. They talk about Diyarbakir prison.
Yeah, those descriptions are difficult. Systematic torture, humiliation, being forced to shout, "Ben Turkum, I am Turkish."
Over and over. It's presented as a direct attempt to, break down and overwrite their identity.
The sheer psychological weight of that, it's really something.
It really is. And it shows, from the author's perspective, how far the state went beyond just language suppression. It aimed for a total erasure.
And then the author shifts focus a bit to Newroz.
Yeah, the Kurdish New Year celebration. Spring, rebirth, hugely significant culturally.
But treated historically as an illegal demonstration, that seems odd.
Well, the author asks that very question. Why view a cultural festival as a threat?
And the answer suggested is
that it became a powerful symbol, a way for Kurds to express their identity, their culture, and maybe their desire for freedom, which was seen as dangerous.
And the state's reaction, according to the source, was often violent.
Extremely so, based on the examples given. The author cites the 1992 Newroz killings, Shirnak, Cizre, Nusaybin. Over 90 deaths reported attributed to police actions.
90? That's staggering.
It is. Then there's 2008, Diyarbakir. Hundreds arrested. The pretext mentioned was kids throwing stones, but the scale of arrests seems disproportionate.
And even in Istanbul, just routine beatings and detentions.
That's what the author describes. It paints a picture of sustained hostility towards this key cultural expression. The level of force used just for celebrating seems, telling.
And this pattern of perceived threat, this forceful reaction, it seems to extend even to children in the examples the author gives.
Tragically, yes. The cases of Silan Unkol and Udur Kaymaz are presented as prime examples.
Silan, 14 years old, killed by a mortar shell just tending animals.
Yeah, and the author highlights the delayed investigation, the alleged lack of any apology.
And Usur Kaymaz.
13. Killed with his father. 13 bullets, the author states. And then allegations of a weapon being planted, the police officers later acquitted.
It's chilling. And the author asks, what threat did these kids pose?
Exactly. That question hangs heavy. These cases are used by the author to symbolize what they see as the devaluation of Kurdish lives and a lack of accountability.
A sense of systemic injustice.
That's the strong impression given, yes.
Yeah.
And according to the author, this feeling, this reality, extends into education too. University life.
Right. The incidents described on campuses are also really troubling.
Very. The author mentions a 2010 incident at Ankara University.
Yeah.
Kurdish students apparently lynched just for singing in Kurdish.
Lynched just for singing.
That's the term the author uses. Then more recently, 2022, Iğdır University, a student attacked, called a terrorist for speaking Kurdish on the phone.
It seems like just expressing Kurdish identity is enough to trigger hostility.
That's the point the author makes repeatedly, citing examples of students being beaten, suspended, investigated in dorms and campuses. Eskişehir, Konya, Elazığ are mentioned.
And the specific case of Mehmet Masum Yelchin.
Yeah, attacked at Ankara Gazi University in 2014 by reportedly 15 nationalists. Then, according to the account, faced police pressure and essentially had to leave university.
So the author's conclusion is that Kurdish youth get labeled divisive just for being themselves.
Precisely. For simply expressing their identity, speaking their language.
Okay, the account then broadens the lens, looking outside Turkey's borders, specifically at Rojava, Syrian Kurdistan.
Right, explaining that Turkey views the Kurdish administration there as a security threat.
But the author offers a different perspective on Rojava itself, doesn't it?
Yes, describing the system there as being built on principles like women's freedom, multiculturalism, direct democracy, sort of an alternative model.
Which contrasts sharply with the experiences described within Turkey.
Very much so. Then the author details Turkey's military operations Afrin in 2018, Sarıkaniye and Tel Abyad in 2019.
Citing reports of civilian deaths, homes bombed.
Yes. And one particularly disturbing detail the author includes, citing international media reports, is about slogans allegedly written on bombs used by Turkish forces.
Slogans like, Afrin will be your grave.
Exactly. The author interprets this as, well, raw hatred directed at Kurdish identity itself, going beyond military aims.
That's a really chilling detail. And this leads into another list the author provides, individuals killed, framed within this context of racism.
Yes. Names like Baron Tursun,
Yep.
killed by police in Izmir 2007. Mehmet Shir and Aldemir, shot during a Newroz celebration in Diyarbakir 2014.
Yasin Buru is also mentioned from the 2014 Kobani events.
And the author adds a specific note there about the political exploitation of his death and what they see as the state's failure to protect people on all sides during those events.
So acknowledging complexity there, too.
Yes. And Deniz Poyraz, killed in the HDP building in Izmir in 2021 by someone described as a fascist, with the author noting the state pointing to the perpetrator's supposed mental instability.
So these are presented as specific examples from the author's viewpoint of the human cost.
Exactly. Personalizing the larger issues.
Yeah.
And all this pressure, this violence, this marginalization, the author argues, it leads inevitably to migration.
Forced migration.
Yes. Tens of thousands leaving over the years, seeking safety, seeking freedom.
Where did they go, according to the source?
Europe, mainly Germany, France, Sweden are mentioned, also Canada, Iraq, and significantly Rojava itself.
And the reasons differed.
The author suggests those going to Europe often just wanted basic rights, the freedom to live as Kurds openly.
While those going to Rojava.
We're trying to build something different, maybe contribute to education, reconstruction there. But the author adds they were still often labeled terrorists by Turkey.
Right. Wow. Okay, and then the account comes full circle back to the author's own deeply personal experience.
It's very moving. Sharing how they had to change their name, how Kurdish was spoken only in whispers at home.
That feeling of having to hide your own identity, even in your own house.
And that internal conflicts, learning the official lines, Jakum, Dojruyum, I am Turkish, I am right, but feeling it hollow inside.
Just going through the motions while feeling suppressed.
Exactly. And the final thought is so powerful that being Kurdish wasn't just an identity you carried, it was something you had to resist with every single day.
A constant act of resistance just to exist.
That's the feeling conveyed. And the author stresses this isn't just history. They see it as a present, ongoing reality.
And there's a hope expressed, right? For a future where they can speak freely, use their own name, live their identity openly.
Yes, a very clear hope for recognition and change. And as we mentioned at the start, they back all this up by listing their sources again at the end.
Right, the human rights reports, news archives, documentaries, official records. It really reinforces that this personal story is interwoven with documented events and analyses.
It does. It shows the foundation for their claims and experiences.
So wrapping up this deep dive, it feels like we've touched on some really crucial themes from this account. The systematic denial of identity, the language bans.
Yeah, the suppression of culture like Newroz, the really disturbing experiences described for children and students.
The impact of military actions, the resulting migration, and underlying it all, this deep sense of discrimination and struggle for basic recognition.
And I think what makes this source so impactful is how that personal voice brings these big, complex issues down to a human level, You feel the lived reality behind the reports.
Absolutely. It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how vital language and culture are to who we are. And maybe it prompts us to consider how, people living in the same country can experience history and politics in such incredibly different, sometimes painful ways. This
Yeah.
account certainly offers one powerful perspective on that.